Hey folks, welcome back. This is another entry in my Cheap and Cheerful series, and today I've got a triple threat for you. Rather than just one puzzle, we've got three. These are all small cuboids from Qiyi, all released fairly recently, and I think these are really fine additions to your collection, so I wanted to cover all three. I think even if you're an experienced twisty puzzler, they may have something to offer you. And as you can see, this one in my hands has some additional functionality besides just being a twisty puzzle, which is always nice. So this one in front of you is the super floppy 1x3x3, which also is a fidget spinner, as you can tell. Then we have the Qiyi 2x2x3 tower here, and the 3x3x2 domino. There we go. So all of these definitely fall into the cheap and cheerful category. They're well under 10 UK pounds, which is my arbitrary limit I've decided for this series. And all of them are really high quality puzzles. There are certainly other manufacturers who make 3x3x2s and 2x2x3s and super floppies, but I find these to be really fine examples of the category. They're all built to Qiyi's typical high quality standards, and the turning in general is really, really good. So if you're going to get these small cuboids, I would recommend these as the best choice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these while I do a kind of slow scramble and solve of each one. And at the end, I'll just sum up the best aspects of each puzzle and then recommend where you might go from here. Okay, so first, let's look at the super floppy. So besides the interesting and somewhat useless fidget spinner capacity that it has, what does it mean that it's a super floppy? Well, a normal floppy cube in a 3x3 format like this, you would just do 180-degree turns and scramble the puzzle like that. And it's fairly trivial. There's not really much scrambling that can be done, particularly, you just have to get the corners back in position, and it's not really a big deal to solve. The super floppy, however, can shapeshift. There we go. Look at that. So that adds a whole lot more interest. And as you'll see in my example solve here, it actually does bear some thinking to solve this puzzle. I wouldn't say it's super challenging by any means, but it does take a few seconds of brain power to figure out what to do. And it's a lot less trivial, personally, than I had expected. So in that respect, I'm quite impressed with this little thing. And definitely, if you want to have a complete 3x3x n collection, you need to have a 3x3x1. So it might as well be one that has full functional shape-shifting capabilities. So here's an example scramble for you. So you can see it takes some pretty interesting shapes once you scramble it up. And the way I solve this is completely intuitive. No algorithms required. So I might start, say, with this edge here. I'll flip it over to match the yellow center that it's on. And then just think about which piece needs to get into position. So we've got a green edge here, or green corner rather, that needs to go here, but it's flipped the wrong way around. So I can bring it over this way, carry it across, and prop it into position there. And now that one's solved. And we can do the same again for the other green corner, which is somewhere, presumably. Yep, there we go. So I just need to swap it with this blue and orange corner, like so. And there we have one edge solved. Next up, we've got this one. So what we need is actually an orange piece over here, but in fact, we already have that, don't we? Yes, we do. There it is. So I need to figure out what to do with this dangling participle over here. So if I take this out of the way, place that into the solved position, where does that leave us? Yes, that's where it needs to be. This one is still out in space, but what we can do is just bring it over here. And actually, that is now solved as well. Okay. So where are we? We're almost to the finish line. And all we need to do, so sometimes this happens, you get everything solved and one edge will be out because of the shape-shifting. But of course, that's very easy to solve. Just do that. And there we go. So you can see that actually, I did have to think a little bit to solve this. It certainly, at no point did I feel I wouldn't be able to solve it. But it's a fun little activity to do for your brain when you've got a spare few seconds between meetings or when you're just sitting about the house. So it's definitely not completely trivial. And I think this is a fine example of the floppy breed. I do hope that Qiyi will consider making other types of floppy cubes, like Megaminx floppies, maybe, you know, 4x4x1 or something like that. You can get those hand modded or 3D printed, of course, but that's a very expensive proposition. It'd be nice to have a mass-produced higher order floppy cubes. So Qiyi, if you're watching, it'd be great to see those. So that's the super floppy 1x3x3 with fidget spinner capacity. Now the 2x2x3, and I'm really a huge fan of this cube. It's definitely somewhat trivial again from a solving perspective, but as a speed solving puzzle, it's actually really enjoyable, primarily because you only need really 5 algorithms to solve the entire thing, and it still requires some intuition in there, even though it's a very quick solve. I actually bought this intentionally to try and figure out whether I should expand my collection more into cuboids. I've seen so many videos from popular YouTubers extolling the virtues of cuboids and talking about all the 5 different categories and how interesting they are. But somehow, in my mass accumulation of puzzles over the last year and a bit, I didn't really get in any cuboids. So I thought this would be a nice, cheap introduction, and as it turns out, I really enjoy it. Now I pick it up several times a day, often, just to fiddle with and solve it quickly, and that's a lot of fun. So as it's 2x2x3, this particular combination of dimensions will not shapeshift. So if I turn the long axis 90 degrees, I can't make any further turns. If it was a 2x2x4, at least a fully functional one, then I would be able to then turn it after a 90-degree turn and shapeshift it, but that's not the case with this one. So what that means is that the long axis can only be turned 180 degrees, like so. Okay, and that means that the yellow and white faces can only scramble with one another, whereas these other 4 colors can get all mixed up together. You'll never have white and yellow on these faces, only on the top and bottom. So that combined with the restrictions on these long axis turns means that you need to solve it differently than you would a 2x2x2 or a 3x3x3, and that adds some interesting elements to it for me. I personally don't get a lot out of 2x2x2 solving. You know, it's fast and quick, but, you know, it's just corners, basically. And to get really fast at it, you need to know a ton of algorithms, and I'm just not very good at retaining those. So this, to me, gives me that quick blast that other people might get from a 2x2x2, but there's more intuitive elements to it, and I find it just a bit more interesting than a 2x2. So for me, I'd love to see this cube maybe adopted, and 2x2 solvers may find it really fun as a speed cubing puzzle. So, enough talk. I'll show you how it looks in action with a quick scramble and solve here. Depending on my luck here with the scramble, I may actually be able to show you every algorithm you need to start speed solving this, which would be convenient. Well, let's see here. It's looking pretty scrambled, I think. Well, let's get that equator jumbled up a little bit more. How are we looking? Yeah, okay, I think that's pretty scrambled. So the way I would start this typically is I would start with the top and bottom layers, the 2x2 layers, and I would look to see if there's any pairs of pieces already matched up. So here I have a pair with the orange, green, and blue pieces here in yellow. So I'll shift those over to the side, and that'll be my first target to solve the yellow face. Now, the quick way to do this is to look at the corner that you're missing in the front. If you put the layer you want to solve on the bottom, there's a simple algorithm that allows you to swap corners from the top right front to the bottom right front. So all I need to do is put the corner I need to solve down here in this upper front position, and then do R2U, R2U prime, R2. Now we've got 3 pieces solved for yellow, and the last one I can do the same thing, R2U, R2U prime, R2. And actually that solved the top layer as well, which was lucky. And now we just need to solve the middle layer. And there's a few different cases you can get here, but really you only need 3 algorithms to cover all of them. And here we go. So now that little 3 cycle I just did of the scrambled up pieces in the equator layer left me with just 2 pieces that need to swap, which I can do by R2, U2, R2, U2, R2, U2, and we're done. Very good. So as you can see, it's a quick and easy solve. There's a mixture of intuition and a few simple algorithms. There's really not too many permutations of this puzzle just by virtue of its size, but more than enough to keep it from being completely trivial. So I really like it, and the example here from Qiyi is particularly nice. Turning is great, you know, primary internals, everything like that. So yeah, I really highly recommend this puzzle. And once I got this one, I was excited to get its brother here, the 3x3x2 domino. So once again, you can see the typical quality from Qiyi in this puzzle. It moves incredibly smoothly, in fact, very, very quickly. So definitely a speed solvable puzzle. However, one thing that's interesting to me is that you don't have primary internals anymore, right? And I think that's just a side effect of the way the mechanism has to be constructed. So if we look at the pieces here, you can see that the core is really cutting into these pieces. So maybe it's just easier to make molds for these shapes of pieces in solid plastic, and you know, it's not really feasible to get that primary plastic internals since the pieces are fairly thin. That's my theory. I don't really know how injection molding stuff works, but it would make sense maybe. So the nice thing about this one is, again, you have a pretty quick little solve, but this adds some layers of depth compared to the 2x2x3 in that now we have edges to worry about, right? And actually, this puzzle is popular enough that people have created full algorithmic sets to solve the last layer on it. I did a bunch of research when this puzzle arrived, in fact, just a few days ago. I really enjoyed solving it, and I've been looking into a few different sets of algorithms that I've found and trying to pick some ones that I might try to learn, just to get, you know, a bit more acquainted with the puzzle and try and get a bit better at speed solving it. So there's a lot going on with this puzzle. Significantly more algorithms are available to be learned if you do want to get fast at it compared to the 2x2x3. If I have one complaint about it, it's that, in fact, it moves so smoothly and so quickly that it's easy to lose control of this puzzle every now and again. But the more you get used to it, the less that happens. Okay, so let's try and mix these up here a bit. Is that scrambled enough? Maybe a bit of that, a bit of that. Okay, there we go. So the change in dimensions here from 2x2x3 to 3x3x2 adds a heck of a lot more possible scrambled positions than the tower. So this is really a more substantive puzzle for sure. And I'm just going to go through a quick solve here once again so you can see kind of how it comes together. So the first thing to consider is that this is now essentially a shrunken 3x3x3. However, we no longer have fixed centerpieces on these four sides, so we have to remember our color scheme, right? Normally you don't need to care about that on a 3x3 because the color scheme is fixed, but here I need to know that if I have white on the left and yellow on the right, and I'm looking around the cube this way, I would go orange, blue, red, and green. So we've got orange here, blue is here, so we'll kick this red out from its position, move it down one to here, and then we've got green ready to go there. Okay, so I've got my white cross on the bottom. Now I want to put my corner pieces into place, and I can do that with a simple insertion algorithm, so which is actually the same one that you use on the 2x2x3. And now we have a corner in place. And we can just do that several more times, like so. There we go. Actually, I was quite proud of myself when this arrived because, you know, I solved it immediately just using 2x2x3 algorithms in my experience with that puzzle. But then I learned, as I said, that there are many alg sets for this thing if you really want to refine your speed solving for it. So, speak of the devil, we have an interesting position here. So let me see. I'm trying to learn some of these algorithms a bit. I think, what do we got here? So we've got one corner solved, three corners out. That edge piece is solved, but these two need to swap. So if there was anything, maybe, I'm not sure if there's a straightforward way that I could solve that. So I need to swap these two and these two, which might be possible. I'm not sure. Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Let's see if I can swap these two, first of all. R2U prime, R2U, R2Y, R2U, 2U prime, RW2, U, M2, U2, M2, U, M2. What did that get us? Anything? Okay, so now I've got two solved diagonally. Need to swap these two, and I need to swap these two. So that should be a y permutation, which I do have an algorithm for, which I've been trying to learn. So that's convenient. R2d prime, R2u, R2u prime, R2d, R2u prime, R2u, R2u, R2. Okay, so I just need to swap these, which I can do the same way I would on a 2x2x3, and we're done. There you go. So that was definitely not the most efficient way to do that, but I often like to just play around with the different cases on a new puzzle when I'm trying to learn speed solving techniques, because learning new algorithms is not just about execution and muscle memory, but it's also about recognition. So I try to fit in several different cases and different solving situations and just try to internalize more what the different cases look like. So sometimes I don't need to be efficient. I'm just trying out stuff and just trying to make it easier for my brain to determine what situation I'm in at any given time. And as you can see, there's a lot more depth to the solve already than the 2x2x3, right? I had to use several algorithms to do that kind of speed solving style solution. And the first stage, there was some intuitive elements. I needed to remember my color scheme, place the edges in the right spots, get my corners in. And there are you can get pretty far into the algorithm construction stuff. I think there's a set of full last layer algorithms that do the whole thing in one go, which is something like 122 algorithms, I think, something like that. I'm not going to go that far. I mean, that's just crazy, and there's no way I'd remember everything. But it's nice to know that this puzzle really has the potential to be interesting as a speed solving puzzle as well, and to a level that the 2x2x3 can't really compete with. So it's, again, a really nice puzzle. I think it's actually the exact same price as the 2x2x3. But when you change the dimensions and flatten it out and make it have edge pieces, things suddenly get a lot more interesting. So I really recommend all three of these puzzles as additions to your collection if you don't have other examples. But frankly, even if you do, I don't think there's any other manufacturers that have produced these small cuboids to this level of quality. So you really don't have anything to lose by replacing whatever you've got with these, or at least supplementing these into your collection. Between all of them, definitely the 2x2x3 tower and the 3x3x2 domino are going to give you the most enjoyment. The 2x2x3 is really quick and more like a 2x2 kind of solve, but to me, there's more intuition and it's more intriguing in a certain way. Whereas a 3x3x2 is like a distorted version of a 3x3 solve, and you can learn some new techniques, some new algorithms. You got to think about color schemes, and it just feels like an interesting recombination of things that you would encounter in some of the n-by-n cubes with its own unique elements. And of course, I didn't mention this, but you can probably tell from the way I was solving it. On this one, the short axis can only be turned 180 degrees. It doesn't shapeshift. It does turn quite far in this direction, but you can see that it actually just reforms itself into the same position. It doesn't change shape in any way. So, that's my little summary of these three small cuboids from Qiyi. As I said, if you want to get a floppy, get a super floppy, and this is a really good example of that. But really, for long-term puzzling enjoyment, I think you really can get a lot out of these, particularly if you're into speed solving. Both really high quality and visually attractive puzzles, in my opinion. So I hope that was helpful for you, especially if you're thinking about getting into cuboids and you want a cheap introduction. This is definitely a good way to go, and it certainly has worked for me. Whenever my big orders of cuboids come in the next few weeks, I'm definitely going to cover those, maybe talk a bit about the different styles of cuboids you can get that are currently mass-produced. I also have a rather exciting 3D printed example of the form that will be coming to me, hopefully, by Christmas time. I can't really say for sure because 3D printing involves some post-processing and so forth, so it may take a little bit of time for it to arrive, but I'm very, very excited for that one. So I'll be coming back at you soon with some more additions in the Cheap and Cheerful series. I've also got a few puzzles that I haven't yet covered in the Over the Top series that I'd like to bring to you. And then come the holiday break, I'm going to have a bunch of new puzzles under the Christmas tree, so I'm looking forward to covering those for you as well. So, as always, stay safe, stay healthy. I hope you are doing well out there. And let me know in the comments if there's other Cheap and Cheerful puzzles you think I should cover.